Well, yeah, Josh, great to have you. I'm glad we're able to kind of connect today, and hear your story about deciding not to be a part of the family business. Would love to, who are you? Who's Josh?
Yeah.
And what's the business that you're in, and let's just dive into it.
Yeah. So Josh Grossfeld, one of the partners at Agency. We are a political strategy firm. Do mostly direct mail marketing, also some non-political work as well. But branding, merchandising, anything that prints, messaging, etc., for political campaigns, nonprofits, and small companies.
So you're
Been
in
doing
DC.
it.
It's gotta keep you busy.
Keeps you busy. It's a really interesting business. The income flows are fascinating. You make about 80% of your income 3 months every 2 years. So it's a different business model than most might be accustomed to.
Okay, so do you serve nationwide as well, or?
Yeah, so we do campaigns across the country, everything from city council all the way to presidential, um, and everything in between.
So you're doing everything from city councils to the big elections and stuff like
Yep,
that. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm looking at your LinkedIn. You've always been in the media space in general, and always niched in the political world.
Yeah, always been in political. My dad's company was a political consulting firm,
Ah,
and
okay.
so slightly different business model. And so based out of Arizona, grew up in the industry. Spent every summer at his offices from like age 12 on. You know, just sort of sitting in on conference calls with him, going to different campaign shoots, TV shoots, etc., and sort of being part of those things. Um, so really not a time where I haven't been doing that. Moved out to DC in 2002, worked for another firm, and switched gears a little bit to another firm for about 10 years and quickly decided that I wanted to do my own thing. But along the way, had to, you know, have some discussions about whether or not, go back to the family business that he had created or kind of go learn other things and do my own thing there. So it's interesting. Yeah, but it's always been in political.
And you said you grew up in Arizona, and that's where your
Yeah,
father's. And is
yeah.
your dad still around?
Yep, yep.
Oh,
If still out
fantastic.
there. He recently retired for the most part, does some small
Okay.
projects here and there, but he's put in his time.
And so was his business more of a lifestyle business?
Yeah, and I didn't realize it at the time, right? So like, I grew up, we had a really good life. Wouldn't have known any different. Having now run my own company and whatnot and seeing sort of how things can be different. Certainly, were different aspects of that, but like didn't know what a lifestyle company was when I was evaluating, but very much so was a lifestyle company, right? Like, so there was a moment when I had moved to DC and about 2 years into that, we went to Vegas together on a company retreat, him and I, to sort of kind of figure out, do I want to come back and take over the business? And he opened up the books, and I had doing books elsewhere for another company at the time too, and quickly realized it was very much a lifestyle company, which is awesome. It provided for my family and for him, and I just couldn't wrap my head around how to make a lifestyle company work for two people, right? And then like grow it. And I couldn't, and I'm sure it can be done, but I just couldn't wrap my head around like how to operationalize that in a way that made sense for what I wanted to do in the future.
Oh, that is so interesting. So I'm glad you're able to open up the books and actually look at the numbers and be like, eyes wide open. Hey, do I go
Yeah,
into this and try to fix things
yeah.
and learn how to scale it with
Yeah,
potentially
not
old
even fixed, like super
teammates?
successful company. Like he
Yeah.
supported himself and the family. Like it wasn't like there was anything wrong with the business. It
Right.
was just not set up in a way that I saw how I could get my hands on it and like sort of making it make my imprint, right? In a way that like would allow both of us to continue because this was 20 years ago. So he wasn't retired yet. Like he still had to like earn like I think it'd be a much different calculation if it's like, you know, someone's retiring and then you're coming on board sort of like to kind of do that transition period. But it would have been a very much like, all right, this company now needs to support both our families. And you know, is it worth taking on that risk for him and for me? And I just didn't see the calculation there.
So there was 20 years ago. Was it, hey, I'm definitely going my separate way and for the future, and that's just how it's going to be? Or did you ever keep it in the back of your mind that, well, maybe
No,
get some experience and maybe I'll come back?
yeah, no, I definitely, definitely. I mean, we had, gosh, I was still vice president of the company for like 10 years, even while I was working elsewhere. And I would do a different project with him. And we would try to sort of cross collaborate and sort of I was trying to sort of create that scenario where like, all right, you keep building this, I'll keep doing this, and eventually maybe the roads will cross again. It will make sense where like we can combine these things. And just never really got to that point. His my work portfolio and his work portfolio, I had some small overlaps. He works, he'd sub stuff out to me. I occasionally stuff out to him. So like we'd like white label each other's work. And that was like close as we got, I think, to sort of like a full collaboration on business. I just there wasn't the um just the pathway for like the actual business itself, the operational component to like really make sense. And I talked to a lot of folks, before finalizing anything there, like talk to other folks who like started work for the family business, what that was like, what to be aware of, etc. So I did my homework, and it wasn't about that, right? It wasn't like a relationship thing. It's like best friend, love my pops, he's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
but it was very much so like, how do we make that company work for more than one lifestyle?
So growing up, he obviously exposed you to the business. It was
Completely.
yeah, you were attracted to it. You're like, I dig this. I can see a future into it. It just the numbers didn't make sense for the both of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the things I bring to this company that most folks in the industry don't is the fact that I had, 20 years of watching someone else do this, right? So most people don't know, one, that you can make a living out of political, right? They just think not like a hobby, but you might work on a campaign, et cetera. But most folks don't know that you can get into sort of actually having a career out of it. So I was really blessed from that from the outset. And then got to see someone create a business around it, and was really blessed from that standpoint. Got to sit in on the conference calls, got to see the cyclicality of it and how do you make those adjustments, the hiring and the offboarding, because of the different cycles that people face, and the relationships and all those things. So like really got like an awesome crash course in a very specific niche type of business, that I've been able to apply to what I've built and what we've grown here at Agency. And that was invaluable. But definitely, as we were like sort of looking at how to build that out, just did not see how those two. I was also in DC, and there was like just there's lots of different functions, and it was a small. Always had a pretty small footprint,
Mhm.
2 to 4 people. I definitely wanted to envision something a little bit larger than that. And so you build off of what exists, or do you start from scratch and kind of build something wholesale? And I think, or it wasn't like a conscious decision. I think it just sort of organically happened as my career path moved one way, and his company moved its way. Just the roads for overlap sort of didn't really ever hit again.
And did deep down or maybe consciously or unconsciously, did you know you needed that, had that desire to kind of stake your own flag, right?
Yeah,
Build that business yourself, go through the hurdles and
yeah.
to make it
I
a part
think
of
that
your
was
identity.
I think that was definitely part of it. And I think when I made the decision just to move to DC, that was a part of it, right? And so I've been working with my with the family business for a bit in Arizona, and I really sort of came to the sort of reflection point of, all right, you've been working with your father on his work for a number of years. Do you really know what you're doing? Right? A little bit like not imposter syndrome questioning, but like dad's always going to give you the feedback that he's your son. I have 2 kids, like 3 kids, like I have sons. Like I'm honest with them, but it's always couched in a really loving manner, right? And I kind of wanted to sort of test my muster, right, and see like, do I actually know what I'm doing? And so moved to DC. I figured the best place to do that is DC. I was wrong, by the way, not the best place to do it. Bunch of bunch of folks up here that are also imposters, but also lots of lovely people too. But wanted to see like go where I thought sort of all that was really happening, and make sure I knew had the wherewithal, had the skill sets and the strategy to sort of build that and learn from other people, right? It was not just about sort of leaving the family. Arizona is a pretty small pool, and wanted to be in a bigger pool, to get exposed to more people, create those networks, learn from other folks, continue to kind of grow and develop. And as that sort of happened from both a strategic standpoint, really recognize, all right, you want to do your own thing. And I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid. I mean, at 15, I had my own website company that I did like campaign sites for some of my dad's clients, like was talking recorded rentals that we were the folks in the neighborhood that had cable, so I would record the videos and then rent them out for 50 cents to the neighborhood kids. Like I've been doing entrepreneurial stuff since I was kid, knew how you could earn money. So like not super surprising in reflection that like I wanted to go off and do my own thing. Um, but definitely, once I got out here and sort of saw how things were done pretty much at every point along the way in my career, I was like, oh, I could do that better.
Yeah. And I mean, tell me about like, current day. Obviously your dad's kind of retired.
Yeah.
Um, as you were building the business, how to treat clients, values, et cetera. How often would you all talk and just try to get that knowledge share?
A lot, particularly about client management, right? And so, so much of any company, but particularly political work that we do, you're dealing with, pretty intense individuals oftentimes, often lovely, often not as lovely, and sort of like how do you handle different personalities and things like that. So really had the benefit from learning from him, and my mother. My mother's a therapist, my dad was a political consultant, so I have this really wonderful blend of kind of how to take all that in and sort of help get people to where they need to be. So I talked to him a lot about how to handle clients, how to handle, sort of just overall client management, how to handle the cash flow thing. So it was a really invaluable resource for me as I sort of, built this out, and then also like learn what not to do too, right? And he'd acknowledge like, here's some mistakes I made, here's what you should avoid. So, really invaluable resource to have as you sort of grow in your own career, but also build out your own thing.
Yeah, it can be like a cheat code, right? You have
Totally.
people that have been in the business, and this is essentially you've got an ancillary business, tangential business, same thing,
Yep.
just a
Yep.
different brand.
Yeah.
Now, today, like how many employees do you have? Do you feel you've surpassed the learning that he can kind of share with you now, or is it still applicable?
I don't know if it's surpassed. I mean, it's like, I'm sure as most of the folks you talk to, like NEO and entrepreneurs, like I am just a constant consumer of like all these biographies of people that have built things, etc. And so like, I think there's always lessons to be learned, like no matter what, like so like constant learning mentality. So like, no, am I still learning? Absolutely. Do we have a much larger footprint? Yes. I mean, we have, 14 to 15 staff permanently and go up to about 50 during the even numbered year. So a much different footprint than he had, but still sort of take those lessons that we learned when I was working with him. And then, after the fact, sort of, in our general weekly discussions about um, strategy, about company, etc. Still kind of always learning from that. So I think it's just sort of how it's applied differently, right? So like as as you're told one thing when you're here in your career, and you can be told the same thing 10 years later, and it means something totally different because you now have that past experience to apply
100%.
back to that lesson, right? And so I've reread same reason I reread a book, right? It means something totally different when you're at a different point in your life or a different point in your career, or a different point in your business growth. So all those lessons to me are still very valuable. I just take different things from them at different points in time.
There's a book I read over the summer, last summer called Just 18 Summers. You ever heard of this book?
Yeah. Oh, hit hard. Yeah.
Oh, oh my gosh.
Really messed up I mean, in a wonderful way, but man, did it mess up my mindset because
Dude.
I read it when my son was 12. I'm like, oh my gosh, I already lost 12 summers. And then I have a 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I'm like, all right, get back on it. No, I actually, my youngest son's 4-hour
Yeah.
meeting is this Saturday. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely, it hit hard though,
That
for
hit me
sure.
hard. So I've got a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, and
Great.
and
So
my
you have like, you got to jump, like you're
got a lot of
good.
time. I got a
You
lot
got
of
some
time. But
time.
I read it and I couldn't put it down. It was written in a way, right, that it's only teaching a couple lessons, but in a
Yep.
way that it's not, your typical business book. Here's 20 ways to do this,
Yep.
and so that really kind of got me into that line of thinking. And it's weird that I then looked at my client base with a different perspective as well. And I was like, wow, there's so many of our clients that are husband and wife, spousal relationships running the business together. That's kind of how my parents were.
Hmm.
Uh, so it put me on this journey of I'm writing a book right now. So you see a bunch of post-its go on there.
I
And
was curious
so
if that's what that was. Yeah.
yeah, so it follows four families, Gen 1, 2, 3, and 4, kind of on
Cool.
this path of, building a family business and then,
Yeah.
taking over. And do I include kids? Do I not want to have them? And all the issues that can be. So it's a lot of fun kind of going through it, but I'm writing it in that kind of vibe, right? Of just
Yeah.
18 summers. So
Yeah. It's awesome.
Well, so now you're thinking about your kids, how are you kind of treating the tutelage of sorts, in a very similar manner that your dad kind of approached?
Similar. So, I mean, I think my oldest plays hockey, so we do travel hockey. So we're on the road all the time, all the time. And my daughter's travel sports as well. So like all the kids are in the car with me a fair amount. So they get exposed to a lot of stuff. It's different than what my dad exposed me to, though. And I think part of it's just sort of like the day and time that we live in, right? So like, you know,
Zoom
I
calls, just
yeah.
calls on
So
five. Yeah.
they hear the calls. They know what's going on in the clients. They know what's going on in the firm. They can ask questions. They're pretty informed about that. We're pretty open about it. But we also listen to a ton of audiobooks together, a ton of podcasts. Like my son's listened to almost all the How I Built This. He's really into actually is a pretty I was pretty proud of him come up with this. Like, so he's really into sports, and we've been talking a lot about AI, et cetera, and sort of what does the future look like. And we listened to one of the interviews in the Atlantic with the OpenAI founder, and he talked about sort of like historically when any of these big technology shifts happen, no matter what, arts and entertainment are still very much like money spent on that. And so he was thinking about that. He's like, oh, so sports is a future for me. I'm like, yeah, absolutely can be. And so he wants to put together a sports management firm. And so he's really into, so we started listening to a lot of sports management business books and things like that. So the answer, I guess, is yes. But more on like purely the business side of things versus like specific to political. But definitely marketing, definitely business. Like they're getting thrown overboard with that. And hopefully,
They're gonna be animals.
yeah.
I
So
guess that's
it's
part of the good thing of the road trips, right? That gives you just a
oh,
ton of time to go.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think it's a heck of a commitment, but honestly, I talk to other folks, and it's pretty rare that you get a 13-year-old to sit with you for 4 hours and actually talk. So I'll take it.
Yeah, I never think about it like that. I'm thinking in the future years.
Yeah,
Um,
good luck with ice hockey in Puerto Rico. We'll see how that works.
so it sounds like they're gonna have the freedom to kind of do their own path. It's interesting sports management. So we've got, and for our client base, we've got about 50 NBA athletes as clients, some wrestlers, some rappers, some baseball players, etc.
Yeah,
And we work with a lot of the management companies,
yeah,
right?
yeah, of
And,
course.
and the value add that they are giving to those families is like next level. So,
Yeah.
and
No,
I'm
I
sure he's diving into it because sometimes it's very hands-on. Essentially, as the management, you're a personal assistant as well, or that's what the team can become, depending on what kind of service levels that they're doing.
yeah, no, we were pretty. I didn't have a full sense of it until he started digging deeper and I started doing. But essentially, some of these guys are just like it's like family offices, right, for these players, which is pretty cool. And his vision is that with the NAL deals and things like that, high schools are going to become more important, and so he's trying to. It's been cute. Like, oh, we'll see. I'm doing my best to be quite hands off about it and letting him see sort of where he takes it. But he's
Well,
coming up with some neat ideas.
tell me this. So one thing that comes up in a lot of the conversations, or the lack of this actually being addressed, is like business continuity, succession. Like I I'd be interested to hear it. Did you and your dad ever have a conversation? Well, what's your dad's name?
Bob.
Bob. So if Bob passed away, what would happen, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, yes, but more in the sense of like, here are my passwords and here are like the clients
Okay.
and like, here's where all the stuff is, right? Like we had those conversations. And I think it was, but pretty much like, if you want to run with it after the fact, like you're welcome to, but like no obligation, right? Like this is not meant to be a burden for you. I do want you to like, you're the only one in the family that would know how to sort of like kind of close things up.
Yeah.
But there was no expectation that like, this is my legacy that I'm leaving you. You must continue the family, blah, blah, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing like that.
It wasn't like a playbook was formalized of, hey, man, if
No,
it happens here, yeah. So
no, I mean,
sometimes,
that'd
right.
be good.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Our family, the food on the table, everything is paid for by the business, right? And so if
Yep.
that business is gone, maybe you have a life insurance policy, but that might just cover the mortgage, right? It's like,
Yep.
how how does the annuity of the business kind of remain if that's possible, you know?
Yep.
And so it's a big project that we work on with our clients is the business continuity. But even for like a firm your size, right? 15 people, you have partners, right?
Yeah. One
Yeah.
other partner, two other partners.
Do y'all kind of talk about that, the
Yeah,
continuity?
a little bit. We had looked at we're actually, it's funny you mentioned this. We're in the middle of trying to figure this out. So we had looked at a couple different scenarios.
Right?
Um, so like obviously the standard buy sell, then also
Yep.
sort of like whether or not the company would get the life insurance on one another, and then like the Connolly ruling just came out
Yeah.
that changes the Connolly ruling that changes all that. So like stepping back and kind of reassessing what would make sense.
Yeah. Right, because they might not necessarily want your wife to be, a partner in
No.
this agency business, nor would she want to be,
Right.
right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We did meet at our first job, so she'd be fully capable of doing that. But I don't think she has any.
Interesting.
She has no interest in doing it. But she'd be more than fine, more than capable.
Well, and then sometimes as well, like even so that's on like the business continuity side, but then you get into the personal side. So what we find is a lot of like husband and wife, spousal kind of dynamics. If you have one individual that's kind of a breadwinner, the other one maybe a homemaker of sorts. But there's not a whole lot of transparency or communication of where are the passwords, or you
Yep.
just started, your fifth crypto account. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the safety deposit box, like what happens in the event that you pass, and just like where are things at? Who do you contact? Have y'all had
Yeah.
any of those discussions?
Yeah. So we have
Oh, good.
we went through the process like the living trust.
Oh, perfect.
Wife and I have the dash lane, so we took like the singular password stuff where I try to share almost all that pretty well. She and we have the monthly financial meetings to make sure like everyone sort of knows what's going on the same page there. We try to do an annual retreat, her and I, are 2 days where we do our like family goal setting for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10 year. Look at what worked in the past, what do we want to do forward, do goal setting.
Gosh,
So
I
really
love
try to
it.
nail all that. We're not perfect about it, but like we're pretty
Yeah.
intentional. We have like a little our weekly meeting, 30 minutes. This kind of goes over. I forget which if it was from the 18. Trying to remember what book it came from, but essentially came from this idea that like if you're not careful,
Yeah.
particularly as you start to get more like the kids get older, et cetera, like every interaction just becomes a logistical conversation with your roommate. And so we really try to sort of like force all those into sort of like a 30-minute period once a week where we go over meals, driving, calendaring. I kind of run it like a little mini forum. So we have one word open,
You do.
a clearing, things like that, right? Which has been super helpful. And then hopefully, not always, but the rest of the time, and we have like our set, weekly breakfast, monthly date, etc. Like the rest of the time, our interactions are much more, fulfilling in terms of like conversations we're able to have. Doesn't
Dude,
always work that well,
you're
but
the
that's
you're the
that's the
top
intentional
you're the top 1% of the 1%.
trying.
Yeah, you
uh,
are. That's fantastic, man. So, I mean, you're doing a retreat, you're having weekly meetings.
yeah,
We do as well, right? Like in with the little kids and nailing down date night, is it once a week? Is it once a month? Because yeah, you nailed it. You just get so caught up in the blocking and tackling of logistics.
totally.
Uh, that time that it's just the two of y'all to talk and dream,
Yeah,
being of the most important things, and
yeah.
like
You need those drivers.
schedule a trip to wherever, to
Yep.
kind of celebrate something. That's very cool. So when you're doing your annual retreat, is it the whole family? Do y'all talk about that with the kids involved as well?
Yeah, so that part's a little bit newer. So the past 3 years, we still do our own solo one together. And sometimes we get away. Sometimes it's just like we'll go to like the WeWork or the coffee shop for a couple of like.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like depends on what we're able to do. But we always have our family, or my wife and I will do our goal setting, and then we always have the kids do their own and like different. I have different worksheets depending on their age, where they sit down and like they try to do something I want to do in my faith, in my community, in my school, in my athletics, and in personal. I think that's what it is. And they just pick one thing. How are they going to do it? And then we all try to sort of help people do that. And then the other thing that we started doing is everyone takes all their iPhone photos and puts in a shared album. And at the beginning of each year, we do a year reflection. Because what I found is like I had forgotten all the cool stuff we did from the previous year. And so we did this really cool slideshow with the family of like, and it's really helps sort of just reflect on like, oh wow, we're pretty blessed no matter what's going on in our lives. Like we had a pretty great year, and helps like focus on what we're going to do next. And then we do involve in like the big family goal setting, but not in like, super grand details. Because the other thing that we did after one of the EO exercises was a painted picture where they ask you to do, the ages of your kids over the next 10 years. And that also really hit home for me, particularly given like the different ages that I have for these kids, like 13, 12, and 6, finding the right year for the overlap for like the cool trip, right? The Europe trip or the Africa trip, things like that, gets a little more complicated because by the time the young one's old enough, the oldest ones are like, see ya, we want nothing to do with you. So like, how do you find that sweet spot? So try to be pretty intentional about it. Doesn't always work out, but I've found that the intentionality at least means that you're sort of catching more than you might not otherwise be able to.
Yeah, that my wife will watch this at some point, and I'm going to tell her about it. Josh is right, aligned with how we're doing things and trying to do things. I mean, it takes intentionality.
Yeah.
It takes intentionality, just like you're saying.
Well, and I struggle with this always, but like in work or in personal, like, you'll see these things and like if you're not doing it perfectly, like, oh, I shouldn't even, like, never mind, I'm not going to do it. And I've just recognized that even 80% of that effort is still so much better than the zero, right? And so it's not perfect. We don't nail it, but my goodness, like it has made such a big difference in terms of just making sure I got intentional time with my kids. I'm time blocking the right way and like making sure that my priorities are where they need to be. Regardless of what's happening around me, I think it's just made those ups and downs a lot easier to handle.
Do you have any brothers and sisters or?
So yeah, I have one sister. She's also an entrepreneur. She has her own event planning company in Scottsdale, Arizona. So she's kicking butt. I have to bite my tongue oftentimes because I'll see, I'll have my entrepreneur hat on when we're talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, the way you could scale this thing. She's like, Josh, I don't want to scale this. Like, I'm very happy with how it is. It is all good. I'm very happy. I have my flow the way I want it to be. We're
Yeah.
good. Unless I have to bite my tongue on occasion, but she's killing it. It's very cool. Both my parents have their own companies. We both have ours, and then my grandfather, great grand, there's probably the fifth or sixth generation of folks like that have been doing their own thing. So
Oh, I love it.
probably hard for us not to have done that, right?
And that's
So
the thing is that for it to be a multi-generational, it doesn't have to be the same business,
yeah,
right? It's more a way of operating,
completely, yeah.
That's
No, and that was something my dad instilled for me from a very young age, and said to my wife when we first got married too. He's like, just remember, and I say to frankly to my staff, who are thinking about leaving or want to go do different things. I'm like, hey, ultimately, like you work for you. You're just renting a desk somewhere, and my job is to make this as appealing a place for you and and fulfilling a place for you to work. And if that's no longer fulfilling for you, like you should go do what you need to do for yourself because that's ultimately like who you work for. You don't work for me. You don't work for anyone else but yourself. And that was something he instilled me from the very, very beginning. Yeah, his dad owned an electric shop company. His mother was a gift shop owner. His grandfather was electric store owner. Like, I mean, just yeah, I actually can't go back far enough in the family tree to not find someone that did their own thing.
have y'all gone down that ancestry rabbit hole?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even back in Europe, they were doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So
We were doing that just the other day and refreshing it, and we've hit a roadblock at a certain point back in Scotland. So it's part of that. We're having a big family retreat with my brother's family. He's got two little boys, and our first cousins, so my aunt, and then their kids and their kids as well. And so we're all coming together, and we're going to talk about some of this stuff that we're having this conversation about.
that's awesome.
Does your sister, does she have kind of like a family retreat as well? Have y'all kind of done some experience sharing around some of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't know. That's not something we've actually talked about. They do get away once a year, I believe. I don't know that they're as structured as I am. I'm probably a little more anal retentive than she is. In that regard, a little more type A.
Yeah.
But they're pretty intentional as well. And we had good examples from our parents too. So they certainly weren't. They didn't have agendas, but they're pretty good examples of like, communicating openly with one another and like being able to like have proper discussions. And we got to see those discussions, and it was a good example to have.
Well, cool. So, I mean, Josh, any, final thoughts if you think of, Gen 1 entrepreneurs considering, they're raising kids just like you and I, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of final thoughts? There's tons of takeaways that you've shared, but, stuff that you
Yeah.
like to talk to that that are in similar situations as yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the point you came around to the end, I think is the most important is like, I think as people look at like the family business and legacy, I think oftentimes people can look at it through the prism of like, I'm going to take this business and then take it over and go with. And I actually don't think that's what's going to happen, frankly, because I think the economy and everything's changing so frequently anyways, like that business may not even be relevant. But what is important is sort of like, what are the lessons learned? What is that infrastructure that's there? And like the entrepreneurial mindset that you're taking on. And so like, to me, what I'm trying to leave my kids and what my father left me, even though I didn't go on with the same company, was not the business legacy, but the entrepreneurial legacy. And sort of that mindset, and that sort of, trying to teach your kids about grit and resilience, because as you know, like entrepreneurial life is not this sweet thing where you're just going to sit around at a desk and sort of wait for things to happen. There's a ton of ups and downs. But those zeros and ones and twos in life is why the tens are so awesome. And sort of being able to sort of appreciate those valleys for those peaks, and like teaching the kids about sort of going through that and enjoying the path of that for resilience sake, and sort of growing from that is, I think, is the biggest lesson that anyone who runs a company can kind of pass on to their family.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. Yeah, the when we talk to like fourth generation, fifth generation individuals, that it has actually been one business. It's like
Yeah.
banking,
Yeah,
insurance,
totally.
these
Right.
huge remote kind of businesses, car dealership, and the vast majority of businesses totally morph, as you're saying. And so it's
Yep.
that spirit that kind of continues on. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.